You're tuned in to the MtG Cabal cast, where they cover Magic, the Gathering finance. All right? You don't know about it? You're tuned in right now and get ready to learn some shit. Buckle your seatbelts and light a blunt and get ready for the MtG Cabal cast. Starring Reptar and Thursty, them onion head motherfuckers.
Alrighty guys, so this, as you can see, is kind of a special episode of the Cabal Cast as we are side by side. So this weekend, we had another St. Lotus Vintage Rotisserie Draft. Obviously, we've talked about that on the channel before. This, however, was one of the first times we both got to play.
Yep.
And play each other.
Correct.
So we wanted to kind of like do something special for that, obviously. So we actually had the match recorded and have commentary prepared for you. But before we get to that, we're actually going to go a little bit over our draft prep leading up, everything that happened like that before we get to the commentary itself. So with that, let's take it away.
Yep. So my draft prep started maybe a month or so ago. I knew that from commentary and from watching historic St. Lotus VRD drafts that I needed to prep at least 3 decks based on my position in the initial seat drafting.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a deck for first and second seat, a deck for a middle position, and then a deck for 7th or 8th. Basically, in first and second, that's where you take Lotus, Ancestral, Time Walk if you're feeling kind of froggy.
Yeah.
And then you get the wheel on the way back after it goes through the first time. The middle of the pack generally fights over some mid-range stuff, so I had a mid-range style deck built for that. And then I had a deck that was built for the 7th or 8th position to take the initial wheel and get some powerful cards that people usually fight over pretty quickly for my plans overall. And when we did the seat draft, I ended up in 7th, in the 7th seat, which is perfectly fine for me. People basically oddly took the middle.
Yeah.
Sam, who took first seat, was very surprised that someone opted into, I think Cody opted into 4 very quickly.
I did. I opted into 4
4
very quickly,
okay.
And she was surprised.
Yeah.
Cody opted into 5th.
Yep. So Sam just kind of walked into seat 1. Like,
Yeah.
That was...
Especially, and this was kind of telling, so I was the first person to pick my spot, and I immediately went for 4.
Yep.
And everyone was like, wait, what? You're not taking Lotus, you're not taking Recall? I'm like, yeah, I don't, like, part of my strategy is, and similar to you, I try to pick a deck that I'm not going to fight with people a lot over the cards.
Yep.
I want, like, maybe 5 to 10 cards that might be in other decks, and other than that, I don't want to bother with it at all.
Yep.
So I went 4th, and first picked Mox Jet after the first 3 picks were Lotus, or Time Walk, Lotus, Recall.
Yep.
And maybe I should have gone 5th, whatever. I didn't expect Time Walk to go that early. It kind of goes a little bit later sometimes, but, and that's kind of mine, and it's the same deal. I have 3 deck ideas planned. Mine were a little bit different because this was kind of a friends and family draft.
Yeah.
So it was just like hanging out, having fun, whatever. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to come with 3 like pre-modern or middle school decks and try to upgrade those with modern cards. And ended up just mashing Siege Rhino and Spirit Monger as much as I could.
Yeah. My seat 1 or 2 deck was basically just going to be what Stephen Hagen drafted.
Yep.
We ended up on similar lists for that seat. I was going to go in a slightly different direction than he did. I wanted to be more like tempo-oriented with a Reanimator package, and Stephen ended up slipping into more of a control deck, which is perfectly fine for that seat. Then in the middle seat, I had a Boros Initiative list that ended up getting split effectively between Cody and Dan, so
yeah.
I'm glad I didn't fight there. I decided that I wanted to instead take a late seat in the draft, hopefully a late seat in the draft, and then draft basically colorless Eldrazi.
Yeah.
So in St. Lotus, I want to say like 13 or 14.
It was 13 or 14, I think, yeah.
Eric Levine brought the Eldrazi Taxes deck to St. Lotus, and I wanted to create the spiritual successor to that deck. I wanted to show that you could play an aggressive Eldrazi deck, that all the cards were relevant, they required answering on a 1-for-1 rate, and that there's a core of a deck that existed. So my picks for this, my first 3 I knew was going to be fighting over, in my estimation coming into the event, in order, Vault, Crypt, and Soul Ring. And that was the valuation of the first 3 cards I wanted to pick coming into the event. I ended up taking Crypt in the 7th seat, and Dan, who came after me, picked Soul Ring, so I didn't get that on the wheel, which is... I didn't think it would be a problem at the time, but evaluating the deck and talking with everyone afterwards, my valuation of those 3 cards was basically inverted. I should have taken Soul Ring and then tried to wheel Crypt. Vault can be whatever. I don't want to take...
Vault's like a 3-4 round sometimes.
That's what everybody was saying, was that Vault went way, way, way early, earlier than expected. But at the same time, because this is the deck that needs to play a lot of... or pay a lot of life to Ancient Tomb, I can't afford to be taking that much damage off of Vault, where I can afford to be taking a singular damage off of Crypt every now and again. I did untap Crypt a number of times. Vault, sorry.
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to untap it a number of times and not take the singular pip of damage, and that was very easy to accommodate. It was really good. It was really easy. The draft overall for me went... There's not a lot to talk about. We'll post not only the link to the spreadsheet so you can see everybody's drafts, but the Mox fields for our individual lists.
Yep.
I didn't fight over anything because I came in swinging at my Mono Rock. Then I floated my Soul Lands down a little bit, and I took Strip Mine Wasteland on a wheel. So I think I went Crypt into Grim Monolith into Strip Mine Wasteland. And there's a reason for that. I wanted to try and throw people off, not throw people off of what I was doing, and maybe force a run on Crucible, Fast Bond, Raminop Excavator, and try and like get people to throw away picks early in the draft on cards that I wasn't even considering from a channel as well for my list. Everybody expected me to either Mystic Forge combo with Sensei's Divining Top and Glaring Fleshraker, which I did not want to do in this deck. I wanted to be really low and just come in through combat and want to combo out. Or take, bless you, Eureka or Channel, bless you, to just pump out some large Eldrazi, which were still in the list. They were very castable, but they were not the core of what I was trying to do. So after I basically took my contested picks very early while other people were jockeying for their mana, basically, or in like your instance, you were kind of at odds with Steven for discard.
Yep, discard, disruption, tutoring,
After like my Mystic Forge pick, the rest of my draft was free. My draft was super easy. There's not a lot to talk about except when I just go over the deck and on the whole later on. But you, however, you were contesting against Hagen for your discard spells. The green cards you were looking for were kind of floating between a couple of people. I think I did snipe Once Upon a Timeout. Very quickly from when I saw when I knew you were in green. I think Dan might have had a green card.
Dan had a few green cards then, even though he
Mark had just taken Oko.
Yep.
I moved Once Upon a Time from down on my list up. And I took it, and everybody was upset except me.
Mine was a little bit different. One of the things I like about the middle seat is the back and forth play based on draft position. So I knew when it was about to wheel to me on the short end, so it was going up the draft from 4 to 1. I couldn't float black. All 3 of the players there were playing black. So if there was a black card I wanted, I had to get it then. And conversely, on the other side, Dan and Cody were in white, so I could not float white cards. And it created this really interesting back and forth for me where I'm like, okay, what cards do I actually need that are black? What cards do I actually need that are white? If I don't pick this one now, is it going to be gone and I'm just screwed? Or how is this going to work? And it actually created a really interesting back and forth, but there were a ton of times, Dan especially, would be glaring at me after a pick, because it was, that's the white card I wanted, or, that's the black card I wanted in Hagen's case.
Very early on, Dan took Stoneforge Mystic, and you and Cody started taking out pieces of
sword.
Dan was trying to find his place in the draft, ended up X1ing, which is fantastic. But he only ended up, I believe, with Cauldra Complete and Stoneforge, and that was it. I don't know if they made it into the main or not.
So they did, but he only hard cast Cauldra Complete all day.
That is correct, because I blew out his Stoneforge Mystic with Kozilek's Return. I blew out his board and stranded the Cauldra Complete for a while. So
nice.
I can attest to that. Cody grabbed Jite at one point. You grabbed
Sword of Fire and Ice, and then Feast and Famine was real late.
And Lion Sash.
Oh, and Lion Sash,
Hagen was presenting as possible Reanimator, so Lion Sash was a good equipment for anybody that had access to white, which was the 3 drafters, you, Cody, and Dan. And overall, I think your draft looked pretty smooth, aside from the little bit of fighting you had to deal with. And like you said, you were in a really prime position to take green cards before both Cody and Dan could really establish what they were trying to do.
And kind of forced them out by taking the green cards that I did.
When you took Hierarch into Hierarch.
Yep.
Ignoble into Noble. That basically ended their run on green cards.
Yep.
There's really nothing
Dan
else left.
especially was like, you shutting that off actually took me away from green, which is why I waited until I was wheeling through the black players to go Ignoble Noble.
Yeah.
Because I didn't think Dan would be on it yet, and I wanted to shut him off green.
Yep. Insofar as my deck was concerned, when you see the list, you're going to look at it, and there will be 2 or 3 cards from Oath of the Gatewatch, and then everything else, basically, as far as the Eldrazi are concerned, are from Modern Horizons 3. And that's not because I literally went to Scryfall, and I started with Advanced Search, Creature, Eldrazi, set, Modern Horizons 3. Like, that was something that I did, because I didn't know them all, but I knew that all the really good, like, powerful ETBs came from that set. They also just presented some of the most powerful options for cards to be playing at a lower mana value.
Yeah.
Basically,
Set's really pushed.
it is. After 5, with the older sets, you get some really good cards that showed up in Pauper.
Yeah, Ulamog's Crusher's great in Pauper. Yeah.
Sire of Ulamog, like Pawn of Ulamog. That stuff is really good for those formats, but not enough for VRD. Yeah. I needed cards that did more, and I found an Oblivion Ring that I didn't even know about on an Eldrazi that costs 1, a Wingding, and a green for a 3/4.
Yeah.
And it exiles a non-creature permanent with mana value 4 or less, and when it leaves the battlefield, the player draws a card.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly fine because it deals with almost every single threat in VRD.
Yep.
Hands down, gets rid of everything. That was fantastic. You have a lot of spawn generation, which I thought would allow me to move up the curve, and it did. One of the problems that I kept saying was this deck needed 16.5 lands and more spawn generation, and I did not put enough. I went too far up the curve into like Eldrazi Ravager, which doesn't do a whole lot. It's very much like Pawn and Sire, where it's just it costs 6, it has great power and toughness, but the keywords on it are Annihilate 1, Cycling, and then it has an activated ability from the graveyard where you can sacrifice 2 Eldrazi to return it back to your hand. That's not good enough.
No.
It was pointed out that there was another Eldrazi, either a 3-drop or a 4-drop, that really did nothing but make Scions.
Yeah.
And there was something else in Modern Horizons 3 that basically turned your Scions into... It was Cryptolith Right for Scions.
Yeah.
And that card is fantastic, but there are a number of elements of the version of my deck that don't really apply to that. Similar to, it was suggested to take Nissa Who Shakes the World. I didn't have enough forests in this list to make that card work. Similarly, with these other 2 cards, you need a critical mass of Scions to be able to do anything relevant like that with them. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have enough, and I don't think you will necessarily have enough. But what I wanted to accomplish of seeding this idea into VRD seemed to have happened. People, like, as things were winding down, people were just like, nobody fought, nobody wants to fight in the draft. Everything you're doing, the word that kept me throwing around was linear. Your deck is linear, it just does the thing, and people just have to answer what you're doing. And that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted to seed this idea into VRD, I want to see it iterated on, and I want to see this divergent path that Brandon and I were talking about happen, where you have a lower to the ground deck that wants to operate in combat, which is the path that I took, versus a Mystic Forge, Sensei's Divining Top, Glaring Fleshraker. We're either going to be winning with that combo, or we're going to make a lot of mana really quickly and channel into a bunch of really big Eldrazi, or Eureka in a bunch of really big Eldrazi, and that's a perfectly fine way to build the deck too. I wanted to come in and show you can engage in combat with a deck that isn't just mono red.
Yeah,
and I
think that's, historically through the VRDs, like one of Mason's best performances was with like a Leovold aggro pile. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that, especially in the St. Lotus meta, is really underrated, is aggro, because so many people go for like, Tinker Blightsteel combo, Time Vault combo, whatever the case may be, combo.
Yep.
And that's really something that I think is ripe for exploitation in this meta for sure.
Yeah. How did you feel about your deck overall? I waxed
about mine. I went, I won 1 out of my 7 rounds, which is 1 more than I thought. Yeah. Because realistically, the deck required people to get mana screwed or spell screwed in order to win, because the power level wasn't there, but it was fun as shit.
Yeah.
I love casting Pernicious Deed. I love casting Siege Rhino. I love casting Spirit Monger, like all those cards. I just got to do the thing I liked doing again, and it felt cool. I wanted a deck that was disruptive and packed a fair amount of removal and disruption. So my main, round, I think it might have been 2, I picked Thoughtseize. 3 was him. And at that point, I was like, all right. And let me tell you, or no, one was Jet, Thoughtseize, him. The amount of times I got to go first turn him, blow your lands out of your hand was so satisfying. And that's something that, I knew hand disruption, especially easily splashable disruption, was really, really good. And I said, you know what? I think I just want to be on like black-green X or just black-green, whatever that looks like. And I think I did fairly well with that. Splashing was pretty easy. My main issue was I had a lot more double pips that weren't green than I thought. Damnation out of the board, Damn out of the main. I, for whatever reason, kept forgetting it was 2 white when I was doing my fetching. Also, not getting Savannah was huge.
That's
because a lot of times I needed to be able to put up 2 green and 2 white, and since Mark had drafted that, I was out of luck because all I had was Scrubland and Bayou.
And Dan took Temple Garden.
Yep, he took Temple Garden.
Yeah, so your only other option at that point was Lush Portico, fetching an ETB tap land, which doesn't always work for a deck like yours until you're in control.
Yeah, like I want to be in control. That's not a turn 1 play I ever want to make. I'll take a forest over that all day, or a swamp.
Or whatever.
Whatever the case may be. But I did like my deck.
Yep.
It did the things I like, and it showed that, hey, there is still, I was competitive in a lot of my games. I just didn't win, but it shows that, hey, there are legs to this.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things I love about the format is it's so open, and of all of the draft formats in the world, Rotisserie Draft, especially Vintage, is the most important for you to read the draft. And it makes it very easy because the spreadsheet's up, everyone can see what everyone picks, but you need to know what everyone else is doing before you decide what you're going to do. And I think that's one of the things I've reinforced through the VRDs I've been in is, look, you want that splashable disruption.
Yep.
Easy ways to mess with your opponent and affordable fixing. You want 1-drops, you want fetches, you want duels.
Yep. To that end, we talked about this ahead of time. I don't know if off the top of your head you know like a focal card in your deck or not that like you saw as one of the best as you were drafting it or even on the day. As we were drafting, I had my 46 cards that I was going to pick through, and then I was floating a bunch of sideboard cards, and I kept jockeying things up and down, and I watched the draft, and I watched Brendan pick balance. Like, okay, if he balances me before I have my answer, that's fine. He has 1 balance, I'll have one answer. That's just how it's going to work. You can't be mad about that, but I have to draft an answer if I think it's going to be useful. And then you draft Damnation. So then Warping Whale just moves up my pick order and lives in my main deck, so I can counter sorceries, Damn and Balance. But the other one that I thought was going to shine all weekend, and it did when I drew it, was Null Elemental Blast, which also lived in my main, because VRD is also a very color-heavy event. The only person who did not splash, really, was Sam. She was in mono blue, and going into games 2 and 3, I didn't think she would bring in the 1 gold card that she had, so I took Null Elemental Blast out of my list and replaced it. Against Cody in game 2, he had enough mana to play Othari, and I had Null Elemental Blast. But instead he played the only card that could ranch me and win the game in that situation, Blood Moon. So that was it.
Yeah.
Like, that is what it is.
I was sitting right next to that,
And then in game 1 against Dan had Comet, which is fine. He has 1 Comet, I have 1 Null Elemental Blast. I can win or through and around the Comet. Didn't happen. In game 2, Dan played Comet and very quickly went to pick up the dice and start rolling, and I said, oh, no.
Yeah, this is happening.
Cavern of Souls still makes a colorless mana. Here you go. Here's your Null Elemental Blast for that Comet.
Yeah,
and the game moved on. Yeah. Like, those 2 cards, I think, were just the highlights of the draft overall for me. They did so much more work than I thought they ever would, and so I think they're going to be something to look forward to as you play basically the colorless deck. I don't want to say it'll be Eldrazi because artifact mana still makes Wingdings, so that those also have a place there. Or if you're in a deck that wants the Pain Lands, you have the opportunity to play both of these cards as well, because the Pain Lands all make colorless. So for you got anything?
My biggest rock stars were obviously him was insane. That card was so good. The other one that I kind of expected to be good, and this is one that Hagen wanted when he thought he was going to be on full Reanimator, that created some very interesting rules interactions, was Triumph of St. Catherine, which we found out if your opponent steals your Triumph of St. Catherine and it dies, it just goes to the graveyard. That's it, the end. Nothing else happens. It took us like 20 minutes, and we'd played 4 turns past that.
That was the extended judge call.
That was the extended judge call. At first, we ruled it, oh, well, she'll shuffle the top 6. You put it just on top of your library. You're like, all right, cool, whatever. And then there was actually a rules correction, not an errata to the card, an update to the comp rules. 4 instances of Triumph being under opponent's control. Just goes to the graveyard. But that was one that I thought was going to be really good, and of course it was.
Yeah.
And him, similar to Necro, it's one of those cards that I think it's kind of harder to use because, all right, are you going to have your best hand at 6 or 7 cards, or are you going to have your best hand at 4 to 5 cards? Because, the debate of playing it on first turn, well, I could hit your lands, and then you're just out of the game.
Yep.
But also, you may have like 2 or 3 cards in there that just don't matter right now, and I don't have to worry about those.
Yeah.
But that was, an absolute blowout. Also, honorable mention, Zealous Persecution. That card is insane. Hagen had True Name, so obviously I have to have a way to deal with that since he took Deluge from me.
Yep.
So ZP was there. It was also very good against Sam. I was able to swing out when she had blockers. ZP, Wiper, Board, and Killer.
Yep. I could not kill the True Name with Warping Whale, or exile True Name with Warping Whale, but I definitely exiled something else of Aegon's with Warping Whale. Also,
Tishana's Tidebinder is insane.
Yes, it is. I was prepared to hear a lot more interesting calls based on that card, but it did the thing it needed to in Unlimited. It's not as offensive as it can be in Standard Constructed. The only concern I have about him coming out of certain drafts, maybe not this one, is that if you him your opponent on turn 1 or turn 2, him's a main deck card. If your opponent is playing a graveyard synergy deck and you just him the synergistic pieces they need in the graveyard, it's like you kind of did their work.
Well,
you did their homework.
I did lose once to Cody, because I hemmed away, I think it was Leelia, it was Dan, and he top decked post-war formal wear.
Yeah.
And just goes, all right, Leelia, get you. And I was like, oh, well, I guess fuck me, right?
Yeah,
what am I going to do?
Exactly.
But he wasn't a graveyard deck. He just had one card that interacted really well with the graveyard.
That's always my concern about playing discard into the reanimation deck, is that sometimes you just do their homework for them. And you're like, why? It's just going to be what it is. All right, so you ready to get into the game?
Yep, let's do it.
So it's going to start right away with our pregame action of determining who goes first. Yep. So let's see. All right, so I think we're going to finish our shuffle here in a moment, and then we're deciding on how to determine who goes first. And your suggestion was to just straight rock, paper, scissors on camera.
Yeah.
Once I finish shuffling. So
we decided it's 1, 2, 3, shoot, and on shoot you go.
Yeah. So as you can see by the names, I'm on the left playing Eldrazi, you're on the right. So we tied at scissors. You win with paper over rock, and then you win with rock over scissors.
Yep.
Which is ironically how our 2 games go.
That is, yeah.
We shake, we draw. You're gonna take your first action, and then I think then the immediate next action is the hootin' and hollerin' that you did over my first turn once upon a time.
Yep.
There's somebody that doesn't believe in what is it Brendan?
Mark Caterberg does not believe in the power of Once Upon a Time. I'm like, no, the decks that card is good in, that card is insane in. Mm-hmm. It is so good. And look. Oh yeah, there was your
So I start to mull here. And I'm not fishing for much. I think that was a 2-land hand, and I learned from the night before as I was building my list on Moxfield and doing the play testing there, even if it is slanted, that unless the 2 lands are a soul land and a regular, and it has to be Ancient Tomb, that I can't keep that hand. It's just a bad hand. The deck won't function, and that's a very easy thing for me to have learned just spending half an hour the night before. As I was building the list and kind of getting it to like 41 cards in the main as I was testing things out. You can see you have Bowmasters already, as you can see that on the far right. So our cards aren't in color; they're in black and white because it was just faster to print them that way for this event. There was some issue with the overall proxies that we were using, so that's Bayou Pass from you.
I'll be honest, going into this, I was kind of worried because you are just much bigger than my early game.
Yep.
So my fear was you're going to get an insane... Yep, there it is. See? That card's insane. I'm looking at Mark and saying that card is insane right now. And he's defending his incorrect opinion about that card being bad.
Yeah, so you're basically just trying to wade through my early aggression.
Yeah,
everybody
I just
worried.
Want the removal to get through the early stuff, and then if I can stabilize, I've got board wipes for your Endbringers, for your Reality Smashers, for all that kind of stuff.
Yep. So I think in this Once Upon a Time pile, there's a mountain, and I think I did this incorrectly. So the math of this deck suggests that I should not have taken the mountain. I should have taken, I believe that was Eldrazi Mimic, like I did. I play Eye of Ugin because
for free. Yeah.
I have so many of the lands that say ETB, name a creature, and then make a mana of any color to cast that creature.
Yeah.
As well as an additional mountain in the deck. So that was just a Bowmaster shoot
to
down
kill
the
the
Mimic because
yeah.
it's just a 2/1 raw.
Well, and Mimic is one of those cards that I'm actually very concerned about because your ability to recur or get redundancy on some of your pieces that are just really good 2-for-1s.
Yep, Cody got by Mimic into Reality Smasher.
Yeah, see, like that's I wanted to avoid that because I knew that was how I got blown out.
Yep.
That is my Orc token with a mass.
Yep.
It might be a Mountain Goat.
So this is Glaring Fleshraker.
Yep.
And I play this incorrectly in this round, at least. I have Ugin reduces this by 2, but Glaring Fleshraker still takes a colorless pip, so I couldn't have actually casted it here off the forest. I could have casted it off any of the other lands I had in my hand. So it was possible for me to play, I just did it incorrectly.
Yeah.
So you can see the Reality Smasher there and City of Traders.
Yep. You got a reader.
So
and means Reality Smasher's coming next turn.
Yep. So I believe that is Vile Aggregate, the card that you were reading.
Yes.
It is the one that requires red in my hand. It takes...
And then decay on that guy.
Yep, you decay the Glaring Fleshraker. They shouldn't have been there anyway. So Vile Aggregate I had in my hand when I hit Once Upon a Time, and I pushed them on. I believe it's the one that costs 1 and a red and has a kicker, 2 and a colorless. And if you pay the kicker, then it ETBs with 2+1/+1 counters and a trample counter. So it becomes a 5/3.
Yeah.
With trample. So now I have Ancient Tomb. So this is 5 mana. So if I had the reality,
you would have been able to cast it, which is what I was afraid of.
Yep, 7 mana in the with the City of Traders. I can cast anything that I draw.
And this is sort of Fire and Ice now that I have hard cast to equip to something.
Mm-hmm. There's the City of Traders, and that's
a Cradle.
That's a Cradle. So at this point in time, I've now drawn back-to-back lands off the top with nothing left in my hand to cast because I don't have a red pip.
Yep. And that was when you played the Cradle was when I knew, we're just winning now.
Yeah.
There's no way we're not. And then it was, swing with that, get there, dome, draw.
So Sword of Fire and Ice equipped to the Bowmaster is 3 damage. The token makes it 4. Then you have the trigger on Fire and Ice, so
6
to deal 2 to me because there are no creatures. So it's 6 damage total every turn, and you're drawing a card, and I'm now at 9. So when I tap my Ancient Tomb for 2, I go to 7. I need to present a blocker that isn't the fact that Vile Aggregate and some of the other Eldrazi's in my list do require a red pip doesn't matter to its color identity. They're all devoid. They can all
the color
block.
identity's there, but it's having the mana there.
Yep.
Which you got Karplusan and...
So I have Karplusan, Forest, and Yavimaya Coast
right,
as my dual lands that also produce a colors because they're very important. I had Undiscovered Paradise, Cavern of Souls, and I think one more...
Unclaimed Territory.
Yeah. Those 3 creature lands, so that's 3 red sources right there. 2 mountains, that's 5 red sources. That's off the top of my head, I believe, all the red sources I had in the list. And that's fine because it's Writhing Chrysalis, or Chrysathis, I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah.
That's 2, a red and a green. Oh, this is... what we're doing here is...
The buy-in.
So
we were told to bring basically 7 cards with a total value of around $30. And the way it works is if you win, you keep your opponent's card and they sign it. And yours goes in the draft
The
prize.
requirement is also that people have to be happy to put them in a commander deck. So I brought as many different Armageddons as I could.
Yeah, because that's the play group for this is Geddon Heavy.
And so you took the Devastation.
Yep.
And I took the Dothi Voidwalker.
Yep.
The rules were questionable all day long about what has to happen, so I think we signed each other's cards, which was incorrect. We should have signed our own cards.
Yeah.
And then the winner decides whether or not they want to keep the loser's card or
put it in the pool and keep theirs. Yeah.
So here, I can't remember both cards that I'm sideboarding in, but I believe it is Kozilek's Return is one of the 2 cards.
That was one of them.
And I want to say it was Obligator. The Threaten.
Oh, Eldrazi. Yeah. Obligator was the other one you mentioned. I just brought in Damnation and 6-mana Elspeth, because obviously.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
those are the ones I bring in there. Dam was already main, so I had one board wipe effectively.
Yep.
But I definitely wanted the redundancy of 2 extra if I could afford it against your late game.
Yes.
Because as much as, like, I can stabilize late game, your late game is, like, that's the same as Tron. If your turn 7 is still casting Karn, that's still pretty good.
Yeah, my 7 mana plays were Sire of the Seven Deaths,
Yeah.
something else that I can't remember off the top of my head, and then we went all the way up to third Lamog.
Yeah, third
I
Lamog
played
was
third
where,
Lamog in
where
the
it
main.
topped off, yeah.
Yep. And so I don't think I sideboarded in more than 3 cards on the day in any matchup.
Yeah.
And there was my sideboard.
Oh, shit.
Let's see, can we roll it back? If I pause and then run this back a couple of seconds, I flash my sideboard. So we can get it in. I should have held it up longer, but we'll see. Well, like I said, we should see K return. Okay, there we go.
There we go.
So it is Kozilek's return and Obligator, like I said, and I take out Eldrazi Mimic because that's just real shitty in the matchup.
Yeah.
And the Eldrazi that I took out is one that I took out here and there. I can't remember the name of it. I believe it's not. I don't think it's Vile Aggregate. I think it's the other one. It's a star 5.
Mm-hmm.
It costs 2 and a red. It has trample, and it has power equal to the number of colorless creatures on board.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know that one's necessarily great against me when you can bring in
If you deed
a
me,
threaten when I have, like, a Spirit Monger or Siege Rhino.
that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
Was that exactly?
Yeah.
And I took that one. I took the star power out because you have the ability to control my board enough that
Yeah.
it's a 3-drop. And if you're just sitting there and 1-for-1ing all my creatures, now I have a 1/5. It doesn't do a whole lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Or if you just deed away all my spawns, or something like that.
Yeah.
Because I can't control for deeds. So this is my first hand. You can see K return,
Yep.
a forest, and I think this is a mull.
Yep. Yeah, you mulled both games. Incidentally, every single game I played, someone mulled in. I won the ones my opponent mulled. I lost the ones I mulled. Funny how that works.
Yeah. Mine was a mixed bag all day long. I went 4-3 on the day. This was the first match, first loss, and all 3 losses that I had were basically the same thing. You saw in game 1, I just runnered lands.
Yep.
And that's just going to be the story of all my losses. That's why this is a 17 land deck as I presented all day long. I think it really is a 16.5 land deck, and you need a couple more Scions, and that's where you get like this really good aggressive
I was kind of
stint.
surprised you didn't take Awakening Zone.
That's something I thought about when I was talking to Mark.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know if there are any other really good Scion generators or Spawn generators.
That's like the best one by
and that
far.
that came to mind. But some of the issue that I have with the Spawn generators is that if you draw them in the mid to late game, they don't do.
They're
a
not
whole
good.
lot.
Yeah, you want them early, which is one of the reasons in this format, especially. I'm like, eh. And here I know I have a Hierarch and a Lion Sash off this. So we have Tomb first
into nothing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can't remember if I wanted to actually cast something or just hold up a removal spell here.
Yeah.
So I think I might have had Warping Well, and I was holding it to see what would pop out because I could get Warping Well exiles a creature with power or toughness less than or equal to 1. There's Glaring Fleshraker, cast appropriately this time.
Yep.
So there's a Strip Mine. This actually came into play a number of times. I think I got Cody with it, and I got Steven with it because if I have a Soul Land opener and maybe a Grim Monolith, next turn I could, in theory, play my 4th land, play a Grim Monolith, still have 4 mana open to cast anything, and Strip Mine you.
And this is a Transgress, which was actually main, because I wanted a 3rd discard spell, and there was enough control that it was really good. Choices here are Reality Smasher and Endbringer, which is obviously real bad for a Hierarch hand.
Yep, so Endbringer is also a really kitschy answer to Time Vault combo, because it untaps in each of your opponent's upkeep, so you can keep papping them for 1, so if they don't have the win in hand, and they have, less life, then it will take them to find
then you win.
You can get them.
Yeah.
So there's the Yavimaya that you knew about. I have 4 mana, and unless I drew a creature off the top, I pass the turn, and I still have Reality Smasher in hand, and maybe something larger or more lands. So that was Transgress. I can't remember if you him me.
Yep,
there's the him.
There's the him. It was Hierarch, Transgress him with other Hierarch. And this Hierarch hitting Reality Smasher was the reason I won.
Yep, so you give me the card I keep. I think it's a land. There goes
Reality
Smasher.
And then now we have Lion Sash on there as well.
Yep, so there's a land in my hand. I top deck another land because you didn't know about the forest.
Correct.
So here I am. Let's see. I don't think I have another play. Yep. So I just stripped mine.
You stripped the swamp. That's right.
You were light on resources, so I wanted to.
Yeah. Well, especially because at this point I'm mana dork. So if you hit a whale or something, I'm kind of screwed.
Yep.
And then we have land drop, kind of.
Yeah. So with Ancient Tomb Forest, Yavimaya, I still have 4 mana. I can cast almost any of my mid-range threats that don't require a red pip. So even just getting the strip mine is fine. You eat the strip mine with lions reality smasher with lion sash, and you come in for 4. Is it 2 on lion sash, or is it 5?
It's 5 double exalted.
Yep. And there it is.
And there it's like, all right, we're done.
It's just more lands off the top.
More lands. So then we decided, you know what, screw it. That's short. That's 5 minutes of commentary. Let's play a third one for fun.
Yep.
And this was, I think, the first time we got an actual game out of it.
Yeah. So I'm gonna pause this and try and speed up through the mush of just shuffling, and here we go. So we pulled up into game 3. Mark was impressed that this file was only 28 minutes long.
Yeah.
I don't think you understand how terrible,
bad it was.
Yeah.
And this is my mull now, which I put 1 on the bottom. I believe it was a Spirit Monger. One of the nice things about my mulligans on this day, oh god, another ooh-ah, was that every time I mulliganed, I either had Triumph, Spirit Monger, or something equivalently costed in there.
Yep.
So.
My hand for this wasn't ridiculous. It was exactly what I wanted to keep. It was a nice average hand. I don't think I keep... I got to see what was in here. I don't think I keep a red source, but I have options. I know, because my hand, it's gassy. I've got a lot going on. This deck doesn't require a whole lot of thought, but sequencing your mana is definitely something you have to do appropriately, and I learned that lesson a couple times throughout the day. So there's a green pip. So obviously I either needed the mana source, or I needed specifically a green pip. So we get the forest. I don't know. I don't think I'm monolithed you in this game.
No, I don't think so.
I definitely. Oh yeah, the forest you knew about. So I think next turn I have something to do. But I definitely, monolith came in handy a number of times. It was pretty good all day long.
Thoughtseize turn 1.
Oh, okay.
Still one of the best plays in Magic, but there's a lot of redundancy and really good efficient threats. Ugin, Endbringer, Thought Knot, and I forget what the 4th one is.
That is, I think it's Pouncer. That's the one that gets counters on it when I kick it. It does require a red pip. So what I think I did was I basically just pushed a bunch of lands to the bottom, and maybe a creature that was wholly uncastable with the hand as is. So that's Ugin the Ineffable, and I don't actually know how good this card is. Throughout the event, it clogged my hand a lot. I think it doesn't. I don't think it goes in this version of the list. I think that might be one of the other cards you cut. So you cut a land to trim down to 16. You cut Eldrazi Ravager for Sylvan Library, and then you cut Ugin the Ineffable for something that makes more Scions, and I think you have a much better core for this deck, but that wasn't for me to figure out coming into this event and sit around in the lab for 40 hours. So here we go. Next turn, Thought Knot Seer is going to hit. The turn after that, we're just going to get some chunk in. So I kept the forest because I needed this. I needed the 4th source.
Well, and one of the reasons I went after the Ugin was because at this point I had Trophy, Damnation in my hand, and Vindicate. So I knew I had a way to deal with your threats. The one I was really worried about was Reality Smasher. I also was stuck on land. So I had to play out the Death Right and hope I could get a fetch land or something. Because I don't have a land play after this turn.
So I'm going to play Thought Knot Seer here. And my draw for the turn was Warping Whale. So
Rhino, Tracker, and Bowmasters. I didn't have. I just had Damnation. So that Thought Knot basically blew the plan out.
So I know I have Warping Whale in hand, and I have, and we both know I have Reality Smasher. So I don't care about this Damnation.
No.
If you want to untap and you want to
tap out for Damnation.
You draw the 3rd land, and then you exactly the worst thing that could happen happens. You draw a fetch land. It gets you another black source. You can put it away for Damnation. I just lose my Thought Knot Seer. What you saw me do here was inappropriate. You don't get the card back. You redraw off Thought Knot Seer. We do handle it appropriately.
Later. It was just at the time we were like, oh, sure, whatever.
I thought you got the card back. I forgot you drew. And then we were like, wait a minute, the card works differently. So I leave you with Damnation, because either you just...
Damnation, a thought not and draw a card, but I know you still have other threats in your hand that are going to be a problem.
Yeah, and by the time I get to Smasher, I can have Warping Wail up.
Yeah.
And I took Tracker because that is the advantage engine.
It is. Yeah.
There was no way for you to accrue value this turn with Tracker.
Yeah.
Because you needed there were no lands in graveyards, so you couldn't activate the Deathrite for the Tracker.
That was the honk for Siege Rhino.
For Siege Rhino, for the Lightning Helix.
Yeah.
So Tracker wouldn't be an advantage engine this turn. I don't have any way to get rid of it besides combat after a certain point, so I couldn't let you start getting clues.
Yeah, you had to have it there, and then the eye obviously makes Reality Smashers so much easier.
Yep.
Same with Whale. Since it doesn't reduce Windings, you could just, it's 3, 4...
This is 6 mana.
Smasher? Yeah.
Smasher's 5. So,
well, with Eye out, it's 3, and then Whale's 1.
Yes,
so.
yeah. Whale's still a colorless pip.
Yeah.
So...
and here's us appropriately handling it, realizing, that's right.
It doesn't matter that's under the Thought Nuts here. The way that we initially thought it worked was just wrong. So we take care of that. I can't remember if I just juiced the Smasher here or not.
I don't think you did.
I'm checking the Oracle text on Warping Wail.
Yeah.
Now, I believe. Oh, I wanted to see if it was... Eye doesn't reduce Whale. Warping Wail, because it's not an Eldrazi spell.
Yes,
that's
correct.
what I wanted to make sure of. Was
it is not tribal for some reason I do not understand.
Correct. It was from Oath of the Gatewatch. It makes Eldrazi spawns. There are Eldrazi in the art. I wanted to make sure it hadn't been eroded
to be an Eldrazi tribal. Yeah.
Yes, because that does change the mana I have at hand. I need a colorless pip for both Reality Smasher and Whale, and I can't have it all this turn.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I can't have it all this turn because Whale is not an Eldrazi spell. So I'm thinking about how I want to sequence. So we know 2 of the 3 cards in my hand. All right, so I'm going to take 2. I'm going to go to 13 or something equivalent.
Endbringer, which is real bad for me.
Yep.
And Endbringer was a card I was most scared about in this matchup. Relying on my dorks for fixing like I had to because I wanted every land to produce green and it just couldn't. It was a huge threat. Also, Endbringer there makes my Siege Rhino garbage.
That is actually... So, the reason why I played Endbringer over Reality Smasher was because Endbringer is the threat I'm most happy to lose to the Damnation. I want to try and bait it out with something that is very relevant. I forgot what I asked about Siege Rhino here. And the game is going to start circling around Deathrite Shaman.
Yep.
Because combat is effectively locked up.
Yeah.
So there you ate, I think, my Once Upon a Time. So I go from 13 to 11 because of Deathrite Shaman. And that's what I'm worried about. So I need... now Endbringer is online. It doesn't have haste. So it's going to start... Despite the fact that there is an untap trigger on it on your turn, the turn after I cast it, I don't get anywhere with it.
No.
I can't remember why I rolled.
The other thing here that's... kind of sucks for me is I was hoping to get a second land so I could even Damnation.
Yeah.
Because I had to Deathrite and had not drawn another land at this point.
Yep.
Hindsight, Deathrite was not the pick.
Yep.
I had a good amount of fetches. Not enough other people did. I should have looked at it less as ramp and a mana dork and more as just a gradual, incremental death engine.
Yep.
Which is really what it was.
Yeah. And here, combat was free for me, because either you're going to block with Siege Rhino and I take away your largest threat, mine lives and it untaps and starts pinging you. So this is Sowing Mycospawn.
Oh, yeah.
So I cast this card a lot. I don't think I kicked it at all during the day. I'm just going to go fetch through my library for a land. That's the thing. You thought I kicked it, so you're getting rid of your Bayou.
Yeah, I was getting rid of the Bayou. I was like, this is obviously the right call. Oh, we did kick it.
Oh, yeah, because of the eye. The eye allowed me to kick it. 2, 4, 6.
Yep.
So that's it. So now I know I'm in the driver's seat here. You need a land off the top, and you need to eat. I
need 2 lands at this point in order to do anything, and this is where
you need a fetch land.
Yep. It quickly got out of hand at this point, which Eldrazi exiling land for what is it? 4? 5?
It's 4 mana after Eye. It is 6 mana without Eye.
That's just insane with Eye out.
I think what I've pulled up are both Cradle and the first creature land that I found.
Unclaimed territory.
So this is unclaimed territory. It comes in, it names Eldrazi. So this is going to give me a colorless pip when I tap it in general.
Yeah.
And I swap
There's
out
Cradle.
for Cradle.
Yep.
Or it gives me red if I need it, and I didn't have red in hand, so I went for Cradle for a larger burst of mana. This is my now Cradle taps for 3, so I have 5 mana available to me. We've already passed combat, so this is not going to be a reality smasher.
No.
But this allows me to reload very quickly if you are able to untap and damnate.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you have 7 mana at this point. There's almost nothing in your deck you can't cast.
Yep.
I am not a deck that casts multiple threats a turn. And you said your whole philosophy was, I have a dude, deal with it.
Yep.
But late game, you're able to cast multiple dudes in a turn.
Yes.
And that was very difficult for me to deal with, being a 1-1 mid-range deck.
Yep.
And I think a lot of the other decks had problems with snowballing towards the end game too, because frankly, outside of Dan's Energy Wipe and Steven
Wrath
taking Wrath of the Skies and Deluge,
Yep.
there were not a lot of Wraths outside of my deck.
Nope. So here we go. We start the ping train.
Yep.
So that's in your upkeep. I ping you on your turn before with the trigger on the stack. Then I ping you at the end of your turn. So I effectively get 2 damage a turn.
Yep. And this was the point where I'd kind of recognized you were just not casting instants or sorceries, not that you had many to begin with.
Yep.
Because you were clearly so far ahead at this point.
Yeah. So that's Yavimaya, Cradle, or Growth. So now my guy is Cradle, taps for a green regardless. I'm pretty sure I had that in hand, which is why I got the Cradle, because I knew I always had the mana source. And now my eye effectively makes my Eldrazi, gives me 3 mana for my Eldrazi.
3 mana for your Eldrazi, yeah.
So there's still a Reality Smasher in hand. And I think I've been sitting on the Warping Wail the entire time, and I just gas it. I'm at 9, which is actually really precarious.
I'm at 14.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure the shaking is because one of us is bouncing our leg nervously.
Yeah.
So this is 3 from Cradle, 4, 5, 6. So this is 8 mana available with an Eldrazi. So, okay.
Here's the Ineffable.
Ugin the Ineffable, and I get rid of the Deathrite Shaman with Ugin.
Yep.
So, you can no longer untap and damnate with Deathrite Shaman. You have to
exile my own Thoughtseize or whatever the discard spell was.
So that's gone. And I think I am sitting on Warping Well in hand, and we're just, again, putting pressure on Siege Rhino. And because you are a 1-for-1 deck, I can now take the time to just send my 5/5 into your 4/5.
Exactly, yeah.
And leave back 7
power of blockers, yeah. So there's Whale and Smasher there. We've got...
Yeah, those are the only 2 cards I have in my hand, basically. They just end the game next turn.
Yep. Got nothing. You're going to ping. We pass it back.
I think I'm
still 1 mana away from Damnation. I really think that while Warping Whale was there, I should have taken the Thought Knot with the Thoughtseize instead of whatever it was I took.
Philosophy on the day was pretty interesting back and forth. Some people cared a lot about Thought Knot, some people did not, and I think it's whether or not they had their own plan. So I was reading my card here. This is one of the red Eldrazi, either Vile Aggregate or the Pouncer, that I put face down. I read it to make sure it was to make sure I understood what it was, and then I had to reread Ugin to see if it was actually a manifest or not. And it's not. It's just a spirit.
It's not. It's just a spirit, which sucks. It should manifest, damn it.
Yeah.
And there is...
That's not Obligator.
No, it's one of the other red ones.
That's Sire of the Seven Deaths.
Sire 7 Deaths, yeah.
Yeah. 1, 2... So it was 1, 2, 3, 4 from the Cradle, 5, 6 from the Eye, 7 from Yavimaya. So you
Bowmaster.
Block the Endbringer.
Yep. Block.
Yep, you threw the token in front of one of them.
Yeah.
And
gained a few life, prayed for land, and here we go, right into Tapped Ancient 2. That was so good.
Yep. You were not the only person I got with that. Mark 1 game 2 of our match, and game 3 he tinkered for Blightsteel for the second time, and he passed it back to me.
Yeah.
I untapped. I knew I had all the answers I needed to deal with the Blightsteel.
Yeah.
But I untapped and cast Once Upon a Time, and it basically was just a choose your own adventure of which way you.
How we're gonna deal with it.
Yeah, there was I I couldn't take the warping whale, and I wasn't gonna give him writhing chrysalis. I just like basically just slid him the card that was gonna undo him.
Yeah.
Eldrazi Obligator living in the sideboard alongside Wayscape Battle Mage for this list overall made a lot of people question their lives and what they were doing. I knew Mark had Tinker for Blightsteel.
Yeah.
So I brought in Wayscape Battle Mage, but I didn't bring in I think I might have brought in Obligator too. And with I hit Eye of Ugin in both games 2 and games 3, but there's a very distinct difference between Wayscape Battle Mage, which costs 2 and has a kicker of a green, so I reduces it to basically just being a wingding and a green to kick it, to exile the Blightsteel, balloons, versus Eldrazi Obligator, which is 2 and a red to cast, and then costs another colorless and a wingding. So with Eye out, it still costs 3, including a wingding and a red, which weren't that difficult for my deck overall to produce. But in that situation, it was very difficult to kind of suss out, and the Grim Monolith that I'd been holding the entire game to do a lot of nothing helped pump through the 7. Just tap it. And I think I sacked 4 Scions to do it, to just eye away and then go get Wayscape. But there's those 2 cards out of the sideboard gave people a lot of trouble because they didn't know which one was going to be relevant in the matchup and if either of them were coming in. Like that kind of techie stuff is what I wanted out of this list, and I got. So, like I said, we'll put the overall spreadsheet in the show notes. We'll put the Mox fields in for our 2 lists so you can take a look at them directly. And then, as always, if you want to reach out to us about Rotisserie Draft or VRD in general, you're more than welcome to. There's also, I think it's just at St. Lotus.
Yes, at St. Lotus VRD.
It's just ST Lotus VRD. Is it STL Lotus VRD on Twitter or STL Lotus? We'll figure that out right away.
Yeah.
But through that is basically a Discord that just runs rotisserie drafts.
Rotisserie drafts.
Vintage, modern, whatever. There are a number of known quantity people that VRD and just rotisserie draft with us.
Interestingly, Gavin posted yesterday a tweet about a vintage rotisserie draft that happened at Wizards, which Eric was not invited to, which made me very mad.
That is a bummer. But, St. Lotus's own Eric Levine now works for Wizards of the Coast.
St. Lotus MTG. That's the one.
We'll do our best to link that in the show notes as well. A very welcoming community for rotisserie drafts. Basically just snake drafts with whatever cards are legal in the format of your choice. They fire all the time. They're done online, same method, spreadsheet. And because they are done online like that, it's an at your leisure kind of thing. So while we were there playing yesterday,
3 people were in an online draft.
Taking the cards
at the same time.
So it's super open, super fun, and I think all the games are played on a provider that works for both players. So sometimes they're run on Moto, sometimes they're run off of Moto.
Cockatrice is a really popular one, Spell Table, all that stuff.
So you don't have to worry about not owning the cards on Moto. We're accommodating, we make it work. So we'd love to have more people come in and join us. And I think there'll be another couple VRDs in 2025.
We're doing them every other month now. We're doing another Midwest Championship before too long, where Chicago's going to come down here since we stomped them last time.
So there will be an amount of coverage for that. We'll figure it out and let everybody know as it happens. But for at MtG Cabalcast on Twitter, Facebook, Patreon, YouTube, and Blue Sky, I am at Halt, I am Reptar, you are
at Damon_Thurston.
And we'll see you next week.